Hello, I'm Erica Stallings. I'm the co-executive director of the Leadership Learning Community, and I am excited to jump into this conversation. I am on a panel with four amazing people who each have a different perspective on what it means to fight to live and live for the fight, which is the name of this panel. As I mentioned, I'm the co-executive director of the Leadership Learning Community, or LLC is what we call it. LLC is an organization that is nationwide, and we work on supporting people who run, fund, study, and practice leadership to think about how to do that differently and how to do that in a way that advances liberation. I'm joined by Griselda Suarez from the Arts Council for Long Beach, Sangeeta Kumar from Be the Change Consulting, Nika Sewell Smith, who is Nika Smith, and Falila Aisha Bilal, who's the interim chief of staff at the Black Organizing Project. And so the title, like I said, is Fighting to Live and Living for the Fight. And the way I interpreted that was, how do we think about surviving and thriving through a lens of interdependence? And so as we talked about the larger conversation theme being movement for life and how we're building sustainability for our lives and for our movements, we're thinking about how we do this in a way that is interdependent. So how are we connecting our individual sustainability and thriving with our collective sustainability and thriving? And how are we thinking about all of our different identities, collectives, relationships, and how are we thinking about doing the surviving and thriving in collaboration? And so together, and over the course of the short time that we have together, I'm going to ask the panelists to talk about what the impact has been on them and their lives of doing this work. I want to hear their thoughts on what it takes to thrive together, and then take a little bit of time to vision and imagine what could be. So I'm going to start us off and ask folks to share their name, their pronouns, and the role they play in the movement, or the role that they're speaking from today, because I imagine that you all may take up or hold many roles, but the role that you're thinking of today. And I'll invite Aisha to go first, and then I'll ask you to invite someone else to go after you.
Thank you, Erica. It is so wonderful to be here with all of you powerful women of color. This is such an important conversation. My name is Falila Aisha Bilal. I use she, her pronouns, and I was born a child of the Black Power movement. My parents, shout out to my mama and my daddy for the work that they did during the Black Power movement. And I've been working for a long time on behalf of children, on behalf of families, and on behalf of folks of color that have been system impacted. I play a bunch of different roles, y'all. First of all, I feel as though myself and probably all of us on the call, I am the work, right? So this idea that this is something that's outside of me is not the case. I am the work. I was born in the communities that we serve. I'm a part of that community. In terms of the work that I've played throughout my time, primarily in the Bay Area, I've worked to help dismantle the impact of the prison industrial complex. I've worked in communities with folks that are dealing with drug and alcohol addiction. I am a drama therapist by trade. So really looking at mental health and the way it has been another oppressive system for folks of color. I've worked to end this rape culture that we are all impacted by, looking at gender-based violence. And currently, I'm working at the Black Organizing Project. Shout out to Bob as their chief of staff. But really, my work is rooted in my life as a liberated Black woman that is going to be free no matter what. And I will pass it to my sister friend, Sangeeta. Let them know who you are, sis.
Ooh, thanks, Aisha. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Sangeeta Kumar. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm the founder and CEO of Be the Change Consulting. And we are an Oakland-based capacity building organization. And I guess the role I play in the movement is, oh my God, there's so many things. I want to just snap to all the things Aisha shared. So many ways of like, in my organization where I'm looking at how to both unpack the traumas that I've experienced, hold the identities that I hold and be an ally to communities that, you know, I care about and want to see thrive. And so Be the Change Consulting in our organization, the hat that I'll be wearing today is we provide capacity building, training, facilitative support to folks in the movement who are looking to put all the pieces together and to keep building out our base, which to me means reaching across our movements to figure out how to like unbento box our movements and find more solidarity with more of us, because our needs are not like, I don't need housing over here and school over here and food over here. Like our needs are really intersectional. And so our approach to movement organizing is like figuring out how to make the tent bigger and bigger and broader and broader. That's a little bit about me. And I'm gonna pass it to my sister, Nika.
Thank you. I am Nika Sewell-Smith. I am a professional genealogist and host and consultant. My pronouns are she and her, and the space I occupy here is to help us remember what has happened, what we've experienced, and what we carry inside of us as a result of who we descend from. My work primarily is considering people of color, in particular African-American folks, individuals who do not believe that it is possible to trace their ancestry, in particular during the period of enslavement, and even during Reconstruction and Jim Crow, folks who think that they have no documentation and no story to tell. And so that's the vantage point that I address this. My space in the movement, I'm a 6th generation voter, and that's by no accident. I know that. How do I know that? Because I researched the records to find it out. And that chain of voters was only broken because of Jim Crow. And so, you know, I stand here as someone who is the niece of a voting rights advocate, someone who testified in front of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. I am the first cousin once removed / niece of 3 freedom riders. I come from a family that the next generation, their advocacy is through whatever their passion is, whether it's dance or whether it's preventing gun violence or whether it's through tracing family histories. That is how we are moving the movement forward in today's day and times. And I am lucky and blessed enough to be able to pass the mic to Griselda, who is down in my stomping grounds in Southern California. Hello.
Hello. Thank you everybody for inviting me and having me here. Buenos dias. My name is Griselda Suarez, and I was born and raised in East LA, and I am working in Long Beach, and I want to extend my gratitude to the Tongva and the Kizh and the Akshaman and the Chumash who call these grounds home, and honor their past generations and their future generations. I work and live in Long Beach. I also want to acknowledge my ancestors from Mexico, that without their work and their ongoing decolonization brought my parents to Los Angeles, and I'm here because of them. My pronouns are she and ella, and I am a teacher and an executive director. I have been teaching Chicano Latino Studies since 2006 here in Long Beach. That has continued to be a very rewarding moment to be in the classroom with the students who are searching for information, and I'm able to do that for them, and I really enjoy that role. And I'm also the director of the Arts Council for Long Beach, and that has been a whole new experience for me, in the sense that although I've been doing nonprofit work for a very long time, I stepped into an organization that historically didn't serve people who looked like me, and I knew that. I knew that going in. You know, I love to say that my movement lineage is from the Chicano movement in East LA, but very specifically, nuns who rebelled against the church. Teachers who walked out, right? Teachers who were students who walked out of the classrooms in protest taught me. And artists who saw the richness of our cultural identity and wanted to paint on walls taught me. And so I bring all of that with me and into my work every single day. Again, thank you for being strong with me in this space. I'm really excited for our conversation. Erica?
Thank you. I'm already regretting the amount of time we have together. I know it's too short. So I'm hoping to get as much as, of the juicy conversation, get to as much as we possibly can, but I know that we're not going to get to it all. So that just means that we have to stay in community with each other so we can keep talking about these things. So as I mentioned before, we're talking about surviving and thriving. And so in this conversation, we're really going to be thinking about health and wellness. And so when I thought about the name of this conference was about living liberation. And so what does it mean for us to live liberation? And how do we have sustainable movements? And so for you all on the panel, why does this focus matter? Why does this focus on living, on sustainability, on sustainable movements and sustainable people? Like, why does that matter to you? Anyone want to go first?
I will go first. I'm fine going first with that one.
Go for it.
Yes. So I have a whole new perspective on living the movement and living liberation. And the title is so perfect because, as I mentioned before, I came into my role in 2016 as a director of the Arts Council as the first woman of color. And 3 weeks later, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so here I was wanting to do the change that I knew what needed to happen in the community, but at the same time surviving in my body. Like, how am I going to do this? And it was a gift. And of course, now now I see it as radical acceptance. I didn't know what I was doing then or how to word for it, but I knew that what was healing me every single day was the community and was the art and was the cultural expression and hearing and being in those expressive spaces was part of the healing process. And so for sure, living liberation, when I saw the title and fighting for ourselves here, fighting to live, living to fight, it was every day for those first few years. And I was able to see a very special particular window, and in many ways see like the intersections within my body every single day because of survival. And so now the healing process is both like organizationally and physically and spiritually for me, and to be able to live that is the journey itself. Like I have to constantly remind myself to stop and see, okay, what am I doing for myself? What am I doing for others? And what am I doing for community? Who's on staff? And the students. That's the work that I bring to my mornings and my evenings as a director every single day.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it to Sangeeta to share her thoughts as well.
Yeah, I love this question. I love what you said, Griselda. I agree. I think so much of our work, like when we're not thinking about sustainability of ourselves, as Aisha said, like our bodies are our biggest resources in our organizations and in our movements. And when we extract from ourselves, like I know I've done this to myself where I'm like, I can push myself. I can go without sleep, or I can go without breaks, or because the work is so important, the urgency of what we're trying to achieve and the change that we so desperately need, it like, there's a paradox, right? Like that urgency, I know I have told myself, just push, girl. And then I run an organization where I send the message that like we all should push and that burning ourselves out is okay in order to achieve this thing. And that's really not the theory of change that I believe in. Like I don't think we're going to get to an outcome using a different set of values than the thing that we want to create. And so this idea of like, how do we create change in a sustainable way, not just like for my own body, but for our collective movement, it's not worth getting to this outcome and sacrificing ourselves in the process. And I think thinking about that process, like how do we get to these really big and important outcomes, these dreams of our collective liberation, that isn't like, it's a well-funded machine that's keeping things intact. And it's based on an ideology that says our bodies don't matter. And so if we co-opt that idea as we try to dismantle that machine, like there's something that we could dismantle there, I think, and be more creative and expansive in how we approach our work. If we refuse to believe that like our win is going to come at the expense of our bodies. I'm gonna pass it to, who should I pass it to? Maybe
Nika.
Nika? Come on, Nika.
All right. Well, here's why I bring the historical perspective. One of my favorite facts that I learned from folks that were in the movement around the time, like Aisha was talking about her parents and the people that have sewn into me, is that they took time off. They would go and picket and be at the club at the same night. And I would be like, really? Y'all? So y'all like, really? But you got to remember, these young people were in their 20s. So they were living their best lives, going out and being active. And it sounds crazy, but it's real. And another thing that is, once they integrated these spaces, they had to keep going back. And I think that's the thing that a lot of us, we don't recognize, is that we see it as a seminal moment, right? The bus was segregated, was integrated. The lunch counter was integrated. We reduce it down to one act when you had to keep going back and testing it. So not only that the people who didn't want you in those spaces recognized that you were going to keep coming back, but also for the people who looked like you to understand that you had a space there and that you had to keep it up. And so when we're talking about sustainability, we have to recognize that, again, it's one part knowing when you have to take a step back, and it's another part knowing when it's time, when it's appropriate to put yourself out there. And even down to going to school in the fall, but not in the spring, so that you could pick it, so that you're not worried about classes and homework and teachers and all of that kind of stuff. It was very, very layered. And our sanctified imaginations of how we've seen history recorded, it just reduces it down to these smaller moments. But when you start talking to people who are on the ground, like many of the people who are here in this space, you recognize that your care and your sustainability in terms of your mental health and your physical health, it's not a monolith. It's dependent on who you are and what your needs are, and how you can, allowing yourself to be able to show up authentically. I'm going to pass it to Aisha.
Man, y'all are dropping straight gems here and so much wisdom. And I'm so grateful to be here with y'all to talk about this. Because as we talk about this, we actually magnify it, right? For ourselves and for others. And so when I think about sustainability, it's just what Nika said. There's no like blueprint other than recognizing that we are part of this larger system, and the work we do is a continuum of those that came before, and hopefully, God willing, spirit led, it will continue with future generations. I myself personally, while I understand that we're in a fight for justice and for freedom, I don't like to use the terminology fighting. I believe that our existence is a testimony to our power. And so one of my elders, Frank Rama, is one of my favorite quotes, and I say it every chance I get. And the quote is, "We are all divine spirits having this human experience." And so when we think about our divinity, that's not sustained by me or you, right? Actually, my divinity has already been predetermined. And as long as I exist, I'm within my divine self. But as a human, we got to rest. As a human, I need to laugh. I need to sweat. I need to eat some good food. I need to lay down. I need to walk. I need to drink water. And so recognizing that we are within these human bodies and within these communities, and the way that we care for ourselves is a critical piece. I also like to say, you can't give what you don't have. Right? Like, as a mom, I have a son who's 20 and I have a daughter who's 16. Y'all, if I'm not feeling happy in that moment, if I'm battling my own depression and I'm exhausted and I'm tired, I can't give them a peaceful conversation. They're going to get in the car and off top, I'm going to be like stressed out. I'm going to be going through it and they're going to feel all of that energy. So I think that as individuals and as leaders of agencies and folks that sit in the center of movement, it's critical that we do our own work that's about our own wellness. And I know the term self-care is like a complicated one that can feel selfish or can feel narrow or can even feel like it's coming out of white supremacy. But I believe that anything I do that benefits me benefits us, right? And so this notion that how are we finding joy, even in the midst of it? Sometimes you got to put down that grant application. You got to put down that breathe for the news people, and you got to just go dance and listen to some music. You have to remember that you are a human. And you also have to remember that you're fighting for justice so that you have the ability to experience human joy. We're not just doing this because this is what we have to do. We're doing this with a vision for how we want to live. And so I do know that sometimes as leaders, and I've done it myself, we get caught up in fighting for fighting instead of fighting for actual liberation and for joy and for wellness and for peace. And that is just as important as all this other stuff. So sustainability is individual. Sustainability is recognizing your divinity and your humanness. And sustainability is about existing and being able to give yourself the things you need to be well.
Thank you. Thinking about how at LLC, we've been spending a lot of time this year talking about play and fun and calling meetings, play spaces and playgrounds, and really focusing on fun. And when you said remembering our humanity, I thought to myself, like over this year, as we've been thinking about fun, I had to read a book. I was like, I didn't remember how to like have fun. I had to like reflect on it, think about it because I was so divorced from it. And so coming back to wholeness, coming back to pleasure, coming back to humanity, I think is a key part of the liberatory work. And so my next question for all of you is to thinking about sustainability as thriving, not survival, and hearing what are your go-to thriving tools? What are you using? What are you doing? What are the practices that help you to remain centered in the face of the multiple crises that are happening in the world, happening in our work, happening in our families, happening in our communities? What do you do to stay centered? Go for it.
You got to be around some young people. I think everybody owes it to themselves to be around children or young adults because we are already jaded. Like we are already jaded. We're all, we're hopeful, but we're just like, they have not been corrupted by the world yet. And if they have, their amount of optimism is at a place that ours is not. And sometimes it literally is just sit and have a conversation. I was at a college campus yesterday and I was soaking up all that college energy. I even put on a playlist. What was I doing when I was 21? Just so I could get myself back in the, I could get back in the, what I mean? All of that stuff, because we forget, we start counting ourselves out and be, and old, I'm in bed at 9:30. I got my weighted blanket up just like everybody else. But sometimes it's fun to just, again, do stuff that you're not supposed to do at your big age. Like, why can't you go to Legoland with your staff and have a good time and cut up? Or why can't you just get bubbles? Literally sit and have a meeting blowing bubbles with each other. That sounds so crazy, but it's freeing because it's not, oh my gosh, this budget. Oh, we have this crisis. I gotta figure. No, sit your behind down and blow some bubbles. It's really simple. It's really easy. And it literally allows us just to stop and just exist. Because the train will get out the station and we can't get it back in. And then we're running on fumes. We got the men in with the coal. They don't even have any coal left. They're scraping the bottom to try to keep this fuel going. And really, we could have stopped the whole operation if we would have just went somewhere and sat down for a second. So my suggestion is get around some young people, because not only will it rejuvenate your energy, but it will also allow you to innovate and think about things in a different way just based off of their worldview.
I appreciate that. I'd like to hear other folks talking about, their tools for staying centered. And then maybe we can get back to this conversation about multi-generational organizing.
So I have so many tools that I use to help myself stay centered. I have a morning routine. And if I'm in the right place, I have an evening routine, but it doesn't always work out like that. But one of the things that I do a lot is breath. Like I take moments to breathe, especially if you live in the Bay Area. If you're driving the streets of Oakland, you better be breathing as you're driving because it's hectic out there, right? And so this idea that I center myself in the work, but I center myself also in my life. And now that I'm on a young elder, I turned 51 last month. I'm like, this is critical, right? How do I care for myself? Sometimes we have to make hard decisions. I recently moved from the Bay Area and I spend a lot of time in nature, which is really important in terms of just calming my spirit and resolving some of my own internal challenges. I drink a whole bunch of water. I participate in wellness groups. So the things I do for others, I'm learning to do those things for myself. And I think any leader that is doing their own individual work is going to be a leader that can sustain themselves within this work, right? I also think it's kind of egotistical of us as leaders to think we don't have to do our own work, that we've just arrived and we're just great and we have the right political frame and we're the right shape and we eat the right best food. So I think we have to also check our egos when we thinking about how we move and what we actually need. And then I'll lastly just say, and not everybody is ready to receive this. I think that also it's really important to speak your truth. And I'll just say that there. And sometimes your truth is ugly, and sometimes it's messy, and sometimes it's painful, and sometimes it's liberating, and sometimes it's, it's sad. But having communities of support, whether it's your sister friends, it's your brother friends, it's the young people, it's the elders, right? Where you can speak your truth, free of judgment and free of criticism, I think is really important and allows us to be grounded and go forward.
I'd love to add into that. Okay, first of all, weighted blankets. Yes. If y'all don't have one, they're awesome. I'll share that I think in the pandemic, what I realized was everything I was doing that I thought was self-care, it was shallow compared to what I needed to stay rooted for that storm. The health epidemic, the racial justice epidemic, the performative wokeness that was almost just as exhausting as the trauma of it all. And I had to really interrogate what I do to take care of myself and my own colonized ideas about what wasn't for me, everything self-care. What I've learned is as soon as I put radical in front of it, then I'm like, oh, I could do that. Radical rest, radical self-care. That sounds okay. Now that feels more like I can do it. So forest bathing, if anyone has read about, you just take your shoes off and you put your feet in the dirt and stand there. It is medicine, I found. And what I was doing before was glass of wine or 2 or maybe 3 at the end of the day. And it was it wasn't enough for what was coming. And one thing that someone told me that was really helpful for me is they were create a dashboard for yourself. I am one of those type A organizational leaders. And they were what is wellness? How will you know that you are well? And I was oh, I need to sleep through the night. And then I was if that's my goal, to sleep all the way through the night, to fall asleep at the time that I want to and stay asleep through the night and wake up at the alarm clock. I don't know about y'all, but that is not what I do on a regular. And so then if I kind of was what is the pivots that I need to do in my own life to get to sleep? And what does that mean for like the time on my phone and what I eat and where I, when I like pet my chickens and all that. So those are some thoughts. What do you think, Griselda?
I just love it. I do a lot of the same things. This is very interesting. Nika, I think the reason why I keep teaching, I've reduced my load greatly. I don't teach it as much as I used to, but there is an energy in that classroom because my favorite class to teach is for first year students that I love and really does give me back a lot. And in 2021, there came a point where I needed to do something. And so I turned to something that I was always curious about, but didn't do. And it was meditation. And now meditation is an important part of my everyday. Before meetings, after meetings, it's a big deal. And I've amped up, I've always done a little bit of this, but you know, I now realize why my mom and my grandma and my great grandma and my uncle and my great uncle are gardeners. I grow my own food. I have homes for butterflies and bees and lizards. You know, now I know, and I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, and it was passed down to me. I have the knowledge. I do it, but now it's so different. The feeling of this morning I gardened before I knew what kind of day I was going to have. It's like, I'm going to garden, take some time, 7 a.m. to just get my hands in the soil. It really does make a difference.
I mean, it's
also
so.
add something. Oh, I was going to add something, and this is not because I'm connected to this at all, but there's a really incredible social media account called the Nap Ministry.
Yeah.
She literally sits and talks about just lay down someplace. And she has a deck that you can get on Amazon where you can pull a card every day and it will give you something about rest culture. There's like a mantra on the front, and then it's like this one says, rest is a beautiful interpretation in a world with no pause button. And then she digs into, you will not lose it all if you pause to connect with your body and mind. You have already lost it all if you are living a fear-based life centered on scarcity. Do not fear what you are missing or losing. You are abundant. Your rest is abundant. You are more than what you produce for a capitalist system. Your worth is deep. You are safe.
Yes. Nika, thank you. We must have been like just in tune with each other because I'm reading, or I've read Rest is Resistance.
Yeah.
I was just part of a 90-day wellness clean led by the amazing Mama Asara. And part of the first 30 days was just us reading to shift our minds, right? So like, for instance, when I've worked at a bunch of organizations, but while working in organizations and caring for my father, I learned that I could sleep standing up. I would be at all these events and I would be running these agencies, and I was caring for my father who had gotten sick. And I woke up one time in a hospital caring for him standing up. I was like, oh my God, I'm a cow. Like I didn't fall down. Like I literally am standing up sleeping. This is crazy, right? Like, what is this? And so when we talk about how do we resist capitalism that says that we are what we produce, and we live in a society where we have mortgages and we have bills and we need to buy shoes and we need to buy our food, we have to find ways to work against that system, not just in the work, but in our lives, the way we live. And this notion of sleep is a very, very serious and critical piece. And so many of us, as we get older, as women and female-bodied folks, have so many issues around rest, and us feeling guilty for resting, us feeling ashamed with the amount of rest we need. And so that piece that you shared, Nika, is so, so critical in terms of just how we operate in the world. How are we letting ourselves rest, including just this notion of how do we quiet our minds? So, and that for me is where I started with, like, I just take some breaths and I practice different breath methods. And you can get so much of that information online. Like, you don't have to be a yogi or like this meditative guru person. If you know me, you know that I turn up and all the stuff, but like, can I take a few moments, a few minutes each day and just breathe for myself? It's very, very, very important. And so, yeah, this is an important question, and we need to continue to talk about these strategies and amplify them and make them normal within our communities.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I think the next question is really about the impact that doing this work has on people. So I think this conversation about like, what are the tools that we're using? Like, what are we doing to survive and thrive is critical. So I just wanted to get to the question of, for people out there in the world, they're fighting white supremacy, they're fighting racism, they're fighting for liberation, they're fighting for justice every day. What is the impact that you see on those leaders' end? And you might want to also add, what's been the impact on you? If anything that you feel like you've given up for this work.
I can go and I'll go quick, which is not one of my strong suits. Man, like leaders are tired, y'all. We are tired. We're exhausted. We experience burnout, vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, whatever the new buzzwords are. We are experiencing that, right? We're operating again within this oppressive system. And so I think that one way to help leaders is allowing them to slow down and think and envision a new world and a new way of being. Right? The impact is also felt within our families. I'm currently working at the Black Organizing Project, and our new executive director, Malika Parker, well, she's not that new, but she's not the founder. And she's this brilliant woman, and she's instituted a 4-day work week, right? And we struggle as organizers on the ground, as admin folks, we struggle with the 4-day work week because the work never stops, right? And there is this expectation, said and unsaid, that you're always working. And so she has said, no, we do a 4-day work week and we have organizational naps. So she's begun to, and other organizations as well, Flourish Agenda and my company, Waterflow Life, like we begin to institute wellness as part of our organizational culture, right? But the impact of this thing is not cool. Like we are exhausted. We are depressed. We are needing some type of respite for the sake of respite to go back into battle, which is problematic because your spirit never really rests when you know you have to go back into battle, right? So I think that one of the things that's really important is allowing leaders to be sufficiently supported so that they can slow down and think, and to not like sacrifice our own mental health, our children, right? And just our own wellness. And that is a daily process.
Thank you. I don't know if folks are able to multitask and are able to look at the chat as well, but people are putting in resources like the Journal of Radical Permission by Adrienne Marie Brown and Nicole Jackson put in the chat. These oppressive systems can be changed. We need rest. We're not robots. And so we're coming back to our humanity. At LLC, we've been, working, I have a co-ED, thankfully, and we use the term like just work in just ways. And then over time, we also start to talk about doing just work also in joyous ways and like having fun and remembering our bodies and remembering our spirits. And I say remembering because sometimes we forget, like we're imperfect too. So we have to come back to ourselves. We have to come back to our joy, come back to our pleasure, come back to our wholeness. But doing it together allows us to return. Sangeeta, I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak as well.
I love that, how you both just shared about that. Well, I think one of our issues in leadership is it's structural, that we have this idea that like, there's one leader. So you talked, Erica, about like a co-leadership model, like a multi-leader model, the story of like, I'm the only one, or there needs to be, like the superhero leader is like a trope in our minds and it messes us up. And of course, that's unsustainable. Any one person, what I see happening is leaders burn out. And when we burn out and we're tired, we want that to be okay. But when you're holding positional power and you're responsible for other people, and your burnout then can become like the thing that's now impacting other people. Because when I'm not doing good, I'm not holding space very well. And it gets to be like this squeezed moment of like, where does my stuff go if I need to both take care of myself and hold for other folks? And so I really think there's like a structural solution which is to keep flattening, keep distributing authority, keep sharing power, and finding like the moments that were hardest for me as a leader, the times where like I had a colleague, a partner in it who was standing shoulder to shoulder with me and cared just as much about what was happening as I did. That was the healing relief of like someone has my back, and I think leadership is so lonely, it's so isolating that can be traumatizing in and of itself, like the pressure and the pressure to perform and show up, not to look good, but really because we care for our people, we care for the folks that we're in community and networks with. So there's something like in organizing movements, right? Like networks and coalitions, we know we need lots of us to do this work. And the same thing is true inside of our organizations. So it's something that we're trying to pivot and experiment with, is how can we be leaderful and not talk about like a leadership?
Thank you. In the shared and distributed leadership model that we have at my organization, that sharing of power has been essential for me to, I'm speaking totally about just selfishly about just me. It has been essential for me to be able to survive and thrive in this work. And so I need somebody who is like, just stop. Like, you're driving yourself crazy, you're driving us crazy, stop. And so having a co-ED who's like, you're going to take a break because you need a break. And so having like somebody who cares enough about you and the work at the same time, and not pitting the two, our humanity and the work, against each other, and having that reminder that we can be whole together, I think is essential. So we need people to have our backs. It's hard to like have the backs of your community and have your own back at the same time. So being together in that is essential. So I'm going to also turn it to Nika to add some thoughts.
I just recently saw this video, I think on LinkedIn, where a CEO, I don't recall her name, but I think she's the CEO of TIAA, and she was talking about how, like, as a CEO, people think they have to be perfect, they can't make bad decisions, they have to show up a certain way, and she's moved to this mind space of her life is a portfolio, and at some points, certain stocks aren't performing well. And at other points, they are. Like, that's those same stocks that were horrible 6 months ago are now doing extremely well. And how you have to really look at yourself as a diversified spot. Some days you're going to have to put more energy into your personal life than you are your job, or you have to figure out what the parity is. And I think in terms of like, being really intentional around leadership and learning how to let go. Because a lot of us, I think, are like, we want to control it. We want to have but in order for you to be a good leader, you have to know who you can trust and who's good at all those parts. It's like a director of a film. The director doesn't control the sound. The director does not even literally put their hands on the camera to adjust the focus. The director is not the person providing snacks. There are people on a set for a movie or a television show who do all of those things, and they're excellent at those jobs. And so you have to get yourself to a place as a leader where you have established enough amount of psychological safety in your organization for you to even let go. Like, I'm good. The ship is not going to go down if I'm not there, if I don't send that email, if I don't tell that person to do that particular thing. And again, once she mentioned that with the stocks, I was like, oh my gosh, that's life, because it's going to be ebbs and flows. Yeah. It's not going to always be perfect. And I think the pandemic really, really taught us that. What I love about what happened during the pandemic it's the fact that folks were reminded that they had lives outside of their jobs. So when your kid walks in your Zoom meeting, screaming, singing, playing with the toy, mommy, see this, nobody flinches anymore. You think back to that BBC interview that man was doing. This was years ago. Remember, he was in his office and the baby busted in, and we all fell out laughing. Because we were like, oh my gosh, but it was literally foreshadowing for what our lives were. So I feel like in this time, in this space, it's been challenging. People are pressed to the edge. I feel like folks are able to live in a certain level of humanity now that we have never seen in our professional lives, where it's okay not to be fine that day, or to show up with the best of intentions and to just verbalize it. Like, it's fine. Like, nobody's going to be there going, Griselda does not she's not wearing her orange glasses today, something's up. No, someone's going to be more mindful. Like, she's showing up different. We're actually paying attention to each other more.
Yep. Can I add one more thing, y'all? Y'all know I got a lot to say. I'm learning and gathering so much from what y'all sharing. It's stimulating my mind. You know, for years I did work around gender-based violence, looking at folks who have survived the commercial sexual exploitation world, folks that have sexual assault. And I'll just say while we're on this call that we haven't really started talking about boys and men and the amount of childhood sexual abuse that they experience. And we need to address that as we dismantle this rape culture. So one of the things that happened for me connected to COVID was I started a company called Water Flow Life. And the company was literally just focused on the rise of the divine feminine and pleasure. And I was super, super specific. It was for like Black and Indigenous women over 40 and white women too, over 40 who weren't experiencing pleasure and orgasm. And part of that was because I knew that principally the thing you focused on is the thing that you magnify. So here I am in all these spaces focusing on gender-based violence and sexual assault and childhood sexual assault. And then I'm in these other spaces, largely with white folks, where folks are talking about pleasure and like orgasm. And I'm like, how do I merge these two fields? I don't want to just be the person that like my friends come to and they say, girl, how do I experience this? Or, you know, how can I liberate this part of my feminine expression, right? Like, I really want to be focused on pleasure. And what would that bring for me personally as I focus on this thing, right? And so I just wanted to lift that up, that sometimes, yes, Sangeeta, more orgasms equal more liberation. Super, super important. And as we get older, yes. And so I created this business that was all about like cuddle parties and female ejaculation and all these wonderful, cool things. And part of it was that I wasn't seeing it in the Black and Native communities. We were talking about this, but like white folks were, and they had this privilege to not worry about paying the bills, not worried about, is my man incarcerated and I can't go to this retreat because I got to put money on his books, right? Not worried about, is my kid being targeted and pushed out of school just for expressing themselves. So they was able to sit in these spaces and talk about how it feels when you lick on my toes. And so I just started this company, y'all, that was really just about pleasure. And it's been an interesting journey. And in that, I decided that I needed to rest and take time off, even with all of the emphasis and the need, right? And so it's been a learning journey for me and for the women that have been a part of this with me. But I just wanted to lift that up, that sometimes even the issues that we choose to work on can be issues that are speaking to our wellness, to our liberation, and to our pleasure, and that's important and vital.
Wow, this is like the easiest panel to moderate because y'all just say juicy things. I'm just like, I'm pretending that I'm doing something here, but I'm just letting y'all go. And I'm just
Oh,
pulling.
I want to say that I'm going to change my dashboard metrics.
I love it. I heard people talking about authenticity and transparency. Nika, just want to pull out, you said like there was some, and I think Aisha, you mentioned it too, about ego work and how we don't have to be all of the things. And that by managing our thinking about our egos and ourselves differently, like we can let other people in to do some of the stuff so that we can then change our dashboards and make a little bit more space for more pleasure and other things in our lives. So I'm going to shift this to another question. I don't know if we can get orgasm into this question, but maybe we can. So I'm going to challenge you to think about it. And I'm also, I have more questions, but I also want to pause after this one and invite people to add questions to the chat. And if you want, if you don't, I'll keep going with the questions that I have. But the next question I have is about how our liberations are bound together. Like we have different identities, we have different experiences. We talked about how the importance of being with young people. So there, as we think about liberation, there's a generational element to add. There's also like what we're experiencing here in this country, but there's also like a global element. So how is our liberation bound together? How can we thrive together? And so the question is, what's needed in order for us to do authentic and sustainable multiracial organizing, and I'll add intergenerational organizing. Anyone want to go first? Nika?
I wanted Griselda to go.
Yeah, I can go. I was thinking, you saw my wheels turning. For me, it's a very interesting question, because in order for me to feel like there is multi anything, right? I have to really hold my community to the question, right? Because it is difficult to go into large meetings where we're all like, let's bring everyone at the table, right? Like that was the term, right? Everyone at the table, everyone has a seat at the table, everyone at the seat at the table, everyone please. But then when everyone's at the table, there's only one way of thinking about it. And so it's hard and difficult at times to then say, okay, why don't we work with this community? We work with this community, particularly here in Long Beach, right? So let's say the Latinx community, the Cambodian American community, because that's the largest Asian community, and the Black community here in Long Beach. Yes, we're doing that work. Yes, I'm in spaces where we're all coming together. But then within my own community, the Latinx community, there are issues of colonization, issues of homophobia, transphobia, that if we don't call it in and talk about it amongst ourselves, it's going to be very difficult for me to bridge in other communities, because then there's no connection. It's superficial. It's so shallow. It's not really looking at the matters and unifying us as people who want liberation. And we are working together, and then it feels also like we're working together, and there's the other group, the white cultural expressive group, your centric group, right? And so then we have to be able to and call the issues out and uplift those who have never had the agenda at the table, right? The like on agendas, decides the agenda, and then no one else can input into it. Give the agenda to someone else, and it's okay. Remove your ego. I know you worked for 40 years within this community. Give us some room. And so I always start within my own community there. And there's still a lot of work. Doesn't mean that I don't do work in other spaces and other communities, but it's really important for me to help people move forward within my own community.
Thank you. Nika or Aisha, did either of you want to address the question of like what's needed for authentic and sustainable multiracial and even intergenerational organizing?
I think it's rooted in history. And to me, you know, a lot of this is driven by the fact that we just have blinders on around other people's cultural experiences in the United States. And, you know, I feel like as a Californian, born and raised, I can't not know Griselda's story. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's so intertwined, and there's so many connections to it. And so I feel like as we become students of history, what happened before us, that enables us to come to the table and to support her efforts, right? Because she's talking about how there's inner community things going on that she has to address, so that when she brings everybody to the table, she needs the extra support. She needs another wall, just like how we need another wall of support with folks. And, you know, and I think, especially if we're talking about our world today and what we're experiencing, we're learning this in real time with what's happening in Gaza, where it's no longer, I'm not looking at it anymore. You're getting life in real time, variance of opinions, people very strongly feeling one way or the other, but life is very gray. And that's how we have to show up to the table, is like recognizing that. And so again, as the person who's focused on history here, I feel like the bounding together is looking at those stories where there are the similarities, there are the things that there are commonalities, there are threads because they're plentiful. There's no shortage of them, and it's uniting around those times that stuff did happen, and making better choices based on what we've learned about how things went the first time, and the fact that we have more information at our disposal in our hands. And sometimes it's not even so much going online and doing a search, it's literally just sitting and having a conversation with someone. Like, I often think it's so strange to me how we are like conversation adverse today. Instead of just literally reach out, go have coffee, not with any agenda other than just to hear somebody else's story. Sometimes that's just enough to get you going.
I mean, Mika said it so well. Common alignment. Where are the places where we have alignment? Again, what we focused on is what we magnify, y'all. So it don't matter if you gay, it don't matter if you rich, it don't matter if you got dreads or you got a weave, it don't matter if you were born in Oakland or Washington, D.C. Where are the places that we have common alignment? I think those are the places where we are powerful. Those are also the places where we can begin to deconstruct and break down these systems of oppression. I mean, in some ways, I'm a child of the crack cocaine epidemic, right? So when I think about the impact of that substance coming into the inner cities and Black communities, it was the first time that you saw Black moms like in this really challenged position. But people smoked crack back in the day the way people smoke weed now. It wasn't like this big thing like it is for us, like, oh, you smoke crack? Like that was the same as pass the blunt, right? And so, but the impact it had on the Black family was because it targeted the Black woman. That is a point of common alignment with all other races of women, right? So where are the places where we have common alignment and how do we build from that place? How are our efforts rooted in not where we are different? I may not ever understand your lived experience, but there are elements of it, there are feelings of it that are the same because we are all human beings. So I think the way you create that multi-generational and that intersectional approach is finding places where folks have common alignment. And, you know, not to lift up the Republican Party, but they do a great job of that, y'all. They do a great job of saying, here's what we care about collectively. And we're going to just talk about that. Whatever you do behind closed doors or in your family or in your household is your business. Now, I'm not trying to say that they're a model for us, but I am trying to say this idea of what is our commonalities is the place where we are powerful.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything else they'd like to add before I move on? Okay. So I just think you brought up the word, I see on your t-shirt it says together we flourish, and you brought up like where we are powerful. And so I'm wondering, like, how do we retain this power despite the fact that we are a very diverse community? If the community that we're thinking about is the we that are on this panel, the we that are at this conference, the we that, you know, we think of as, you know, who share the political homes with us. And so my next question is both a why question and a how question. So like, why is it important for us to talk about our differences? And how do we talk about our differences while retaining this focus on what brings us together, what unites us? So how would you describe like the importance of talking about the complicated nuances of race and ethnicity, nationality within liberatory spaces?
I could maybe start. I think that when we talk about liberation, you know, like so many of us have been sharing, our identities, our like histories, our legacies, it really matters like whose liberation and what kind of liberation and what are we liberating from that we're talking about. Like it's one word that paints, you know, different mental movies, right, for folks. And this idea of like racial liberation, I believe as we are working in as we try to keep expanding our tent and look for solidarity, we also, I think, want to really recognize the layers of identity and the intersectionality that exists. And I think our movement is plagued with these identity politics and oppression Olympics. So as soon as you start talking about, nobody wants to be oppressed until you start talking about oppression. And then everyone's like, here's how I'm proximate to oppression. And no one wants to say I'm accountable, right? I have privilege, and my privilege is allowing these oppressions to happen. And so like, I think in our how, right? So it's more like, how do we, it is important to visibilize that when we talk about our liberation, we may not all be needing liberation from the same things and at the same pace and at the same urgency. And so I think we need to decide who are we centering when we talk about liberation, and how do we build our strategies on that center? Because otherwise the multiplicity of what we're trying to get to is creating this conversation about like, who goes for incremental wins? And when I go for an incremental win, who am I sacrificing? Like, we go for incremental wins on the backs of our neighbors, of our community members, of our brothers, of our sisters. And so one strategy that we have been using in our like meeting spaces, coalition spaces, is to racialize ourselves. So if we're talking about racial justice, we ask everyone to decide what racial identity are you representing? And then let's create a speaking order. If we're here to talk about Black liberation, then let's let the Black folks speak first, right? And then let's let people of color speak next. And then let's let white folks speak last if there's time. And the speaking order, what it changes. So like, I keep thinking about how do we use structure to create culture? And what I see happen in that is the conversation changes, right? We move away from strategy into stories, my body, my lived experience, the need for rest, the need for solidarity. And then our ideas about what our strategies should look like can be informed by the empathy for that experience, rather than how do we move really fast, which is creating some of the problems that we talked about before. So those are some thoughts.
Yeah, before we move on to the next question, I'm going to ask Griselda to add a little bit.
Sangeeta, thank you for that. I just wanted to comment, because what you said and what Nika said earlier, it's about conversation. It really, really is. And as a funder and a leader within this organization, philanthropy doesn't want to fund conversation. They want to fund policies, frameworks, statements, outlines, executive reports, and summaries. But this is the work. This is the hard work. And in very recent community work that we've been doing, people want to collaborate. People want to work within various impact zones or impact neighborhoods. And this is the kind of work, environmental, social justice, right? But then when it comes to conversation, that moment where someone's saying, I did not like what you just said. I am uncomfortable with what you said. What you just did or said is blank. And we encourage conversation. People step off, people leave, people get upset. And I just really think that the way you framed it is so right on. I will use that. I really appreciate it, because that's where the work is. I really do believe that.
Absolutely. And we deeply need each other. We deeply need each other, even in the places where we have conflict. And so what does it mean for me? Like I have two baby daddies. I never married either one of them. I had these children. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because these are our children that are a part of this world. And so whether we like each other or not, whether we get along or not, we actually deeply need each other. And so how do we move from that place, even with, and especially with, the places where we have conflict, where we have difference? For me, I say it and it kind of, people get annoyed with me, but I think it's about love. And love doesn't always look tender. It doesn't always look soft. It doesn't always look nice. Sometimes I'm loving on you when I'm flashing on you, right? And so, but how do we also stay in the room for that? How do we not just walk away and say, well, I'm just going to check out? If I believe I need you, I may need to walk outside and take a breath, but I have to come back in, because this is the place that we're deeply connected. So just lifting that up as well as we think about how do we process through our differences, right? Are we here just committed to winning, or are we here committed to being, right? And what does that look like when we are being with each other? That means all of this shows up. And it's not easy, but it's rewarding and it's important. And I think it's how we have existed. Forget sustainability. It's how we actually have existed since the beginning of time, is recognizing we need each other. And so how can I be and how can you be so that we can build?
So I'm looking at our time and we're getting close to the end. Have appreciated this time with all of you. So we talked a little bit about the second to last question. So I'll lift it up a little bit in case anyone has anything to ask, add, and then I'll move to our last question. And the second to last question was, what happens when it doesn't work easily? And people lifted up conflict. And so I'm wondering if anyone has anything else they'd like to add about what do we do when it gets hard?
I think sort of aligned with the conversation we were having about talking. Maybe one of the ways to get the conversations funded is to teach people how to talk to each other. Maybe it's rooted in conflict resolution. You know, I remember, you remember the days of yore when they would they just dispatch the team out to talk to the different gangs, and, you know, they would have them on the street. You had a million documentaries about that, like, and they were all on HBO. But anyway, like, how is it that we had people doing conflict resolution for that, but we don't have this right? Like these liberatory spaces, right? Where we're literally being taught, like, it's fine to air your grievance and to talk about what you've experienced, but at some point we have to leave that place and get here so that we're all on the same page. And all this is rooted in communication. And as long as we don't keep talking, we're not going to keep talking. Like, you have to talk to keep talking. So I would say, yeah, like, whoever has the money and things, I'm like, maybe we have to write the grants. That's, again, you bring in someone to teach people how to talk, especially these multiracial groups where they have all these differences. And it's not even so much a moderator. It's like, show me how to have an intense dialogue with someone where I'm okay realizing that I might have to walk away from this for a couple hours or even a day, but that I'm still emotionally invested and connected to this, to where I'm going to come back. And you have to really have already primed and worked with a group for a while in order for you to know that. But I'm like, dispatch the communications people. Like, that's what it sounds like we need. We just need folks in a room sitting up talking for a long time.
Thank you. Unless someone has something they want to add, I'm going to bring us to our last question, which is, what's working? What's an example of something, a person, place, thing, whatever, that you've seen, you've experienced, that inspires you, that lets you know that we are going to win and that we're going to do so embodying our values, and engaging everyone in our communities. So what inspires you?
So I'll shout out the work that's happening at the Black Organizing Project. We in 2020 had a big win that most of you probably know about, the George Floyd resolution, where we got police out of the schools in Oakland. And it's been something that we've been, yes, and it was before I was there, but it's something that was so powerful and so important. And so this conversation around educational justice is happening not just locally in Oakland, but nationally, that we know what safety looks like in our communities. We don't need an outside entity that has historically been oppressive for Brown and Black folks to come in and keep us safe. We don't feel safer when there's cops around. We actually feel less safe, right? So this idea that we know what safety looks like, the community knows what it needs, and the school system being one system that hasn't collectively been revised to actually speak to what the science says, like teenagers shouldn't even go to school as early as school starts. That's a whole nother conversation. But this notion that the system itself needs to be redone, the work that Bob is doing right now in terms of the implementation and looking at, okay, we know we don't need police, but what do we need? And how do we lift up the power and the voice of community to actually dictate that process is super, super important. So that's something that's working. And again, it's a long-term commitment. It's far from easy. But I'm really honored and grateful to be at Bob and to be learning how to create this type of change, and to also be working with younger folks that are doing this work as organizers and getting ready to step to the side. And again, just focus on orgasm and pleasure, y'all. And all this administrative stuff be done. But yeah, we have some big wins, and there's going to be more.
Thank you. I think we're gonna get like the hooks soon. But I want to lift up the Liberatory Leadership Partnership, and particularly Kairishi on this call, and appreciating her for everything she's done to like bring this conversation together.
Love you, Kairishi.
And I think that the relationships are a way in which it inspires me. I recall a conversation where I was not giving to myself what I needed, what I would give to others, and Kairishi, which I would always say, that don't sound liberatory, when people were not, treating themselves in a liberatory fashion. And I did it to myself. And Kairishi was like, come on, girl. Like, and so that way of being like reminded of like, of my own value, and also like my own, to be in alignment. And that was a consequence of relationship. And so I think in the ways in which that we are all connecting and building more relationships that are grounded in liberation, that inspires me. And the knowledge that like we are building something, an infrastructure of people that are moving us toward our values and our principles. So I just want to thank you all for bringing in everything that you brought into this conversation, keeping it so juicy, keeping it so real. Glad we got orgasms in there a couple times. Love how we, you all coming in from the perspective like genealogy and history, art, organizational development, like intergenerational organizing, grassroots organizing, communities of color. Like there's so many different perspectives, even though we might look like in some ways, in some perspectives, we look monolithic. In reality, this is an amazingly diverse ecosystem of rich perspective and understanding about how we create the new world that we want to live in. So I want to thank you all for being with me in this time together. Hopefully I didn't miss anything in the chat, but just very much appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you for
You're awesome, Erica.
Yes.
And yeah, thanks we and Goliath too.
Yes, thank you, tech folks.
Yeah.
Y'all are amazing, for sure. I wish you all a wonderful rest of day.
Thank you.